Cool. So the great thing about this course is math is my least favorite thing ever. It's probably the thing I'm the least strong at intrinsically, but it was the thing I had. And if any of you guys can do this for me, I had what was called blue card, red card syndrome. I banked with Bank of America when I started my business, and I had a red card. That was the personal debit card. I'm a gym owner. I just started. It means there was no money pretty much within this card, but I had a blue card. That was my business debit card. And I used that blue business debit card for everything. Everything was a write-off, because back then I thought I was super clever. Like, man, I'm just going to write this off. It means like I'll never have to pay taxes on it, right? And I ran with this where I never used my own personal cash. I never paid myself. I did my truck payment, my rent. I mean, you name it. I found a way to use the blue card, the business card. And I did okay. Like I survived. The second I kind of learned about what a financial model was and how to look at my business, understand what I'm currently doing, what's my current financial model, and then I could start tweaking the knobs and the dials, was really the acceleration point for me. This is about 2013. This is where things really took off. And I'm hoping that's going to happen for some of you guys, or at least open your eyes to that today. Now, let's get into some basic operational definitions. A financial model is essentially a purposeful strategy for allocating your revenue towards various aspects of the business. Okay. Now, we're going to call that allocation, that verb, right? The process of taking the money I made and then giving it to my payroll department, giving it to my operating expense department. That's going to cover things like rent and push press and my Spotify account and whatever else, my insurance. Okay. Taking money and allocating it over to profit, right? Maybe a savings account I have set up for my profit, right? Maybe, or my own distributions as an owner, if I'm taking distributions as an owner, or if I'm paying myself as a W-2. Now, all of this was first taught to me in Mike McAllister's first book, which is called Profit First. And then John Briggs later completely retranslated that book essentially into Profit First for micro gyms. And this book I highly recommend to anyone who's looking to increase their financial hygiene and literacy. This is an incredible book. John's great. He's the only CPA I've used. Those guys are phenomenal. But essentially, Profit First, if you've heard of that, and if they just do raise your hand if this is a familiar term to you, or if anyone's currently using a Profit First model. Essentially, it's just cash flow management. All right. It means all the money that you generate and you make, we are then going to designate into different accounts. So these categories here: revenue, profit, owner pay, payroll, operating expenses, and taxes would be the 6 accounts you would run with. I will say I am not a PFP. That is an actual designation, a Profit First professional. I do not have that credential. The book is going to give maybe some slightly different suggestions than I am today, and that's perfectly fine. This is one of those things where it's kind of like education that you then interpret yourself. So these are the 6 accounts that I'll talk about, or categories of the business. As far as where the money that goes into revenue should be then dispersed to. Now, the reason we want to make sure we're doing this, okay, is because having one account is bad for business. How many of you have ever gone and just, looked at your balance in your business checking account and saw that it had some money in it? And there's less stress. You kind of breathe like, $15,000. I'm good, right? I'm good. Not really, because you don't really have that money. A portion of that is got to be shipped off to the IRS in April. A portion of that needs to go to your coaches. But it gives us a false sense of security, right? Literally, we can look at the account like, we're good, I'm fine. I don't need to have any kind of sense of urgency right now. When if you divvied your money up into separate accounts, like the Profit First model recommends via allocations, you would have a much different thought process, or maybe a higher sense of urgency and a better picture, a snapshot as to where the financial health of your business is. So instead of $32,587 being the subtotal, you have it broken down and you look at all these different accounts that you could have. Now, some of these can be savings accounts, some of them can be checking accounts, but bottom line is you're going to break this up And the revenue account you see has $0 in it. Revenue accounts are only what would be tied to Stripe and PushPress. So as the money comes in through your Stripe merchant processing, it is then dispersed into these various accounts. And we're going to talk about to what percentage and what allocations and all that here in a second. But essentially, everyone's looking, instead of having one big plate of food, we're distributing the food, the revenue out into the appropriate categories or departments of the business. Now, when we look at this and you look at those accounts, it still can be very assuring. Like, oh, I got $4,000 in that account. I got almost 14,000 in that account. When really, that money is going to go to the zero in a certain period of time, especially in that OpEx account and that payroll account. The goal is to always take your revenue account to zero because you distributed and allocated the funds, and you're going to distribute and allocate enough to satisfy your operating expenses and your payroll. Those are the two big ones, right? We're not paying our rent, we're in trouble. Our coaches and staff aren't getting paid, we're in trouble, okay? But those ones are going to relatively go to zero. They might not actually, you might keep maybe $500 in there as a reserve or whatever it may be. But essentially knowing that when I look at the amount of money I have, it just helps me understand I don't actually have that much money. That money is actually already out the door and has been earmarked for other purposes. It changes the way you feel about looking at your bank account, as it should. Because if you broke it out like this and you're like, oh crap, man, and if we don't sell 6 more memberships, I'm going to be having a hard conversation with a couple of my coaches because I might not be able to make payroll. I want you to have that fear and that sense of urgency because you're actually seeing what it is. I don't want you to walk around on a Friday, shut the door, close down for the weekend and be like, oh, no, we're good, because you saw some big number in that checking account. Now, how it actually works. So all that money hits the revenue account. Okay. How many of you guys, and I can't see, I don't have my little window open, but how many of you draft your members? You're charging the ones on subscription on specific days of the month. It could be the first of the month, maybe the 1st and the 15th. There's some kind of recurring schedule. How many of you guys do that? That's option 1. That, me personally, that's what I always did. And it's what I recommend for the average gym owner who is looking to grow the gym. Now, how many of you do the drips? Meaning if someone joined on the 7th, they pay on the 7th. If they join on the 12th, they pay on the 12th. The money just kind of drip throughout the month. That's fine too. I will say that in the early days, some of you guys mentioned, I believe Gavin informed me that it was around an average of maybe 2 years in business. We probably haven't accumulated a ton of cash per month. Our TMR, total monthly revenue, is not that high yet. So that can make it hard when you just have these little itty bitty drips throughout the month. Like, all right, I got to pay that bill, but I need to wait another week because I know I have a couple more drips coming through. I would urge you guys to consider doing prorations and having established, draft dates. It could be the 1st of the month, it could be the 15th. But what happens is when you have a bunch of cash guaranteed to come in, you can plan all your bill pay around those. You can call every vendor you have, and you can ask them, can we move my payment date to this date? Because that's when my customers pay me, and they will. And depending on whether you're doing credit card or ACH, we all know the business, how many business days there's a lag. So for me personally, my dates for payroll were the 8th and then the 23rd, because I drafted customers on the 1st and the 15th. So if I got drafted on the 1st, couple business day lags, maybe there's a holiday, I know that money's in my account and everyone's getting paid on payroll on the 8th. Same thing, I draft on the 15th. I know that by the 23rd, that money has cleared my account.
We got
go ahead.
We got a couple people that are doing it weekly. It looks like a weekly recurring subscription.
Yeah.
What do you think of that?
So everyone knows the math, the little hack of doing it weekly, right? And that's great. I love that. The math doesn't lie. That totally works. Customers see less, there's arguments. Customers see less bigger transactions, but more frequent transactions. But again, however you're doing it, if you were drafting weekly, I would probably recommend we do your allocations weekly then as well. And we'll talk about that here in a minute. But anyway, based on your financial model, which we need to create, we got to know out of 100, what percentage is going into which of these buckets. You go ahead and allocate those. So with my gym, when we had it, we did all our allocations twice a month. That was it. And any cash that came in between, because you know what that looks like. Somebody comes in and, drops in for the weekend and drops $200, right? A payroll, hoodie, 2 drop-ins, that cash goes right into the system. It just sits in your revenue account until your next allocation. Okay. Any questions on currently where we're at right now with draft dates and things like that and how this actually works? Good. And again, I can't see it. So like,
I don't see any right now, but yeah, you guys can in the Q&A section in the Zoom for later too, if you have a question, and we'll answer them as quickly as we can at the end.
Cool. So let's do a case study. So let's say your gym is generating $20,000 in TMR, total monthly revenue. This is gross per month. Okay. Now, once the money has cleared the account, we want to get 100% of it out of the revenue account. We want that revenue account to go to 0. Okay. So in this particular financial model, the owner has decided to allocate 5% to profit, 15% to himself as owner pay. Now, remember, owner pay means a distribution. This is not a payroll W-2 salary or wage for work you do within the business. Okay. They're classified differently. If you're an S Corp or not an S Corp, select as your LLC. Like, this is where you'd want to talk with your CPA about this. But when I'm talking about owner pay, that is only in the form of distributions. Okay. Payroll, 40%, operating expenses, 35%. And he's putting away every single allocation, 5% of all his gross earnings for taxes at the end of the year. Now, actually, let's go back real quick, just so you see how that breaks down. We see the 5% is 1,000, right? The 15% is 3. I mean, think about this in 20 grand. And I know how much you guys are drafting per month, but think about this. If anyone's in and around 20,000, look at that and just kind of think about your payroll, your operating expenses. And the reason I chose these, and I hate doing this, and I'll talk about this at the end. If someone's like, well, what allocation should I have? And I literally bumped into you in the street and I have no idea about your business. I hate doing those answers, but I would give you this very vanilla breakdown. I'd say this generally probably might be good, but I have no idea based on your scenario. But for anyone out there who's just, you really like to just have like what's some kind of guy, something for me to shoot for? This would probably work sometimes for some people in some situations. And that's my disclaimer on that. Okay. All right. Now, how to determine your allocation percentages, right? First, establish your current financial model. We're all coaches here. If I came to you and I go, hey, can you help me back squat 450? You'd be like, well, maybe. What would you ask me first? What would be the first question you'd ask me? What do you squat now? Right? What am I starting with? I need a data point. So when someone comes to me and we want to do financial model work, I need to know, well, what does your financial model currently look like? The great news is you already have a financial model, whether you realize it or not. So what I would recommend as an exercise, you take everything you've done in 2023, go all the way back to January 1, and you figure out every month what amount of your money you spent in those categories. Stu, I made this amount, and then I spent this to distributions myself. I spent this in payroll. I spent this in operating expenses, and I probably didn't save any money for taxes. So that was a 0, right? Maybe you did, which would be great, but you would go ahead and figure out, this is what I actually do currently. What most gym owners find when I run through this with them, we're generally not earmarking money per month for taxes, which again, is okay. They're letting it build up in their quote unquote profit account or their savings account or whatever their one account is. And then they're just going to write a check at the end of the year. I would still encourage you to create a separate tax account. But this is where you go and this is my current financial model, because no matter what I give you, if that doesn't work, like, well, Stu, I actually need 47% of my money to go to payroll because that's what I've promised these guys. Like that's their employment agreement. So we got to stick to that. Can't just change knobs because Stu thinks it's a good idea. I need to know, what are you doing now and why? Generally, what you'll find here, you'll be like, oh my God, I'm spending way too much money. Way too much money. I'll give you some percentages to kind of base this off of towards the end. But this is a great exercise. Every month, if you're looking at your numbers, You should have it spit out the numbers so you can see the percentages of your revenue and where they get deployed to. Now that we know what you've done historically, and I know kind of that's based on what your rent is, what you're paying people, what you take home, right? All that. Now we can create your new financial model. Now, this is the part where financial models are 100% tailored to the gym or the business, let's call it, at a certain stage. And I'm not going into all the stages here. We'll be doing that in a later course here with PushStart, but there are stages of business, right? There's infancy, right? Then we get into growth and sophistication. Then you have what's called maturity and decline. There's different stages, and we see most gyms of the micro gym, group fitness, small, maybe private, semi-private, training type facilities generally go through some commonalities within their financial model. I'm going to go through two examples here that there's hundreds that we can come up with, but I'm going to talk about two of them. And I'm going to talk about why the percentages were decided to be what they were. And then maybe that'll help you as you start thinking of your unique situation, help dial in, your payroll versus your owner pay or whatever it may be. So we're going to stick with $20,000 a month, and we're going to go with the model on the left. Okay. So this first model on the left, I'm going to discuss. Now, this first model has a theme to it. All right. This first model, this owner has a goal. Stu, in 2023, I've made a commitment to myself and my team as I'm going to professionalize their wages. I want to really pay my staff more this year. Awesome. Great. So our financial model has to match that. So after talking with this gym owner, we're going to set it I want to establish a $60,000 a year salary for my general manager. And then I want to use what's left over for part-timers. So I'm going to have a full-time, full-focus employee, and then a strong core group of part-timers. So we run the numbers, and based on that $20,000 they're generating on average per month, we know we can create a $60,000 a year salary plus a $36,000 total year budget for part-timers. And that comes out to about payroll at 40% or $8,000. So every month that gym owner has $8,000 to go ahead and spend on this one full-timer and then the remainder on staff. Okay. Now, because this particular business, in speaking with them, hey guys, do we have any ambitions or plans to go to a bank, private equity or private funding and borrow money at any point in time? No, we're just getting started, man. I'm trying to pay my people the right amount. I'm trying to make some money. I'm not thinking I don't need to borrow any money. I don't want to go into any further debt. Great. Well, then we can afford to reduce your profit margin. Maybe they were a gym that was, had a very impressive, Stu, I've got a 22% profit margin. I'm like, that's so nifty. What are you doing with the money? Well, it's in there, saving it for a rainy day. I read in a book one time that I should have 6 months saved up of operating expenses. I'm like, that's fun. And we should have some little money set off to the side. But the one thing COVID taught us, nobody probably needs 6 months of operating expenses in their account ever. That's not why any business went out of business during COVID. Trust me. Okay. The thing here that I look at, I go, well, here, great thing. You're profitable, but you're telling me the business needs to grow. What could help it grow? Well, I need to pay my staff more. Okay. Well, hoarding it in the bank at a 2% interest rate probably isn't the best place for that money to be. Why don't we reallocate your profit to your HR department, to payroll? And that's where we went ahead and we decided, okay, let's go up to 40% and go ahead and we're going to drop profit down to 5 because we're going to save a little bit, $1,000. So at the end of the year, they'll have $12,000 of, oh crap money in case, the water fountain breaks. So they want to buy some new this, that, or the other thing, but there's some savings there. But we're prioritizing our money at $20,000 a month. And there's no shade being thrown at us. We can all admit that is not a lot of money yet. It's a good spot to be at, but we know the business is capable of doing more. So, but in order for it to do more, where are revenue generating departments? Staff, team. That's a revenue generating department, the people who work for you. So we're going to put money there. If they also go ahead and tell me, hey, Stu, I've removed myself from payroll. Okay. I'm no longer going to take any payroll. Like I'm off the floor, and I'm going to take the money I was paying myself to be on the floor, reinvest it into this payroll of $8,000 a month so that I can give it to Coach Sally. All right. Now I'm going to still take an owner distribution of $3,000 per month, but who knows, maybe this owner's significant other also brings home, in another industry with a different paycheck, brings home enough money that they can afford to do this. And in the infancy stage of their business, they say, this is how I don't want to take home extra money. I don't need it right now, but my business does in order to grow. So you can see how a conversation about a financial model with the goal of increasing staff pay can get very involved. And a lot of questions have to be asked in order to arrive at these numbers. Now, let's say we have the second model that I said I'd share with you. Let's say I have an owner who is like I want to buy a building, or I'm going to open a second location, or whatever it is, or I'm saving up for a house, or whatever they're saving for. But their goal is, I need to save cash, Stu. I need to be lean and mean, and I got to save as much money as I can. So in this scenario, the owner wanted to purchase a building for the gym within 5 years. Maybe they had an option to purchase with their landlord, and they see this, and this is a feasible opportunity for them. Well, if they can go ahead and save $4,000 a month, $48,000 per year, well, in 5 years, guys, you can purchase over $2 million. You can purchase a $2.4 million building. Okay. I'm not going to go into the math of that, but if you want more of the math on that, come see me in Nashville, because I'll be speaking on the gym real estate side as to exactly how to do that. All right. Now, this owner has the luxury of being a part-time owner. They don't work in their business full-time. Maybe they still have a full-time corporate career. Well, that is a luxury for them because they don't need to distribute any cash out of owner pay. It'd be nice. I'm sure they'd like to, but they know at this point, I'm going to let this business pay for my awesome team members, and I'm going to let this business put money away so that I can buy a building, because that's how I see my future wealth and retirement play working out. So I'm not taking anything. I have a full-time job. This gym is a wealth vehicle. It generates cash that I will then deploy to a proper wealth vehicle, which would be a building or whatever they do with it. Okay. So in this scenario, I'm able to make the recommendation. Yeah, you're not taking home anything then. We're going to take your funds and we're going to distribute them to profit, because this could allow you to have that building within 5 years. Now, due to the higher profit margin that this business is going to generate, the CPA is going to be talking to this owner and say, hey, you're making a lot of money, and that's purposeful. But that also means you got to pay more. Any of you guys who had your first year that you were not profitable, probably underwhelming for you. Probably wish you would have been profitable, but guess what? You didn't have to pay a lot in taxes. There's a plus to that. That's why when people are always trying to avoid paying taxes, my advice to them, as someone who worked my butt off to use that blue debit card so I didn't have to pay any money in taxes, and also someone who had some tax payments that were, that made it so I couldn't sleep for a couple nights. Taxes are a good thing, guys. They're showing that you're actually making money. Now, there are some great CPAs out there that might have a great tax strategy for you. Like, hey, we're actually going to do this, this, and this with your categories, your allocations, because I want to keep your tax burden low. All right. We're going to move this money here. Again, I'm not your CPA, but this is where you would have that tax strategy conversation with your CPA. And in this particular one, the owner and the CPA and me agreed we probably need to have a little extra cash on hand this year come April for the IRS. If there's any money left over, we'll kick it back to the profit account and for the savings. But again, just to show you guys, just in these two examples, kind of how intricate and intimate of a conversation needs to be had in order to create these variables, right? And understand where the money needs to go and why, because everyone's situation is just a little bit different. All right. Now, general recommendations for your financial model. Okay. These are things that, again, it's not specifically for you, but I think by and large, it probably helped kind of give you some good parameters or guardrails. Number one, typically in our line of work, due to the cost of what commercial real estate is and what it costs to operate the businesses. And if you noticed, payroll and OpEx are decoupled. Okay. I've had people like, what, isn't payroll technically an operating expense? Yes, it is. It 100% is. However, we look at this stuff in payroll as things that generally are going to be revenue producing. Now, I would argue that your rent, if you lease the building, is 100% a revenue producing expense. It's an investment actually. But when we're looking at payroll, we want to separate the two because payroll is directly tied to obviously the growth of your company because it's the growth of the employees. The employees don't grow in compensation fulfillment on a long enough timeline, neither will you. So I believe that typically you should be capping your payroll at around 45% of what you make. If you tip over that, you're probably going to need a unique variable like Stu. My dad owns this building and he doesn't charge me hardly anything in rent. Cool. Great. You got the hookup on rent below fair market value. Booyah. Good for you, boo-boo. Let's overfund that payroll account. Okay. Maybe you're going to go ahead and again, like I said, the part-time owner and your significant other makes bank and you can afford to not pull any cash out of it for a while. Great. We have to allocate that to payroll then if you need to. Now, allocating about 10% of your TMR towards taxes is generally a safe bet. So always just in my head, for every $100 I make, $10 to taxes, right? Every 1,000, 100. That's just a safe bet because you never know how things are going to shake out towards the end of the year. And again, this is where your CPA and you every year should be having a tax strategy meeting. What if you want to buy a house? You guys know that in order with a mortgage, they're going to go back 2 years. Oh, but yeah, last year, Stu, I didn't pay myself hardly anything because I thought I was going to save for such and such. So I reallocated all the money. Well, yeah, but now you changed your mind and you want to buy a house now. Well, now the bank's going to go back and look back on 2 years worth and you're not showing you made any money last year. That's why you've got to, again, you got to talk with a CPA, a financial planner, a business coach, whoever you're talking with, and plan these things out in advance if and when possible. Because when it comes to finances, and if you ever have to do any lending with the bank guys, and some of you might realize this, banks get very sketchy with self-employed individuals. It's tough. You could be crushing it with your own business, and they would still prefer W-2, even if you made less money. So there's this kind of fine line, and your CPA will talk to you about how much you need to pay yourself in a W-2 versus how much in distributions, right? Especially if you have a goal like I want to buy a home or whatever it may be. Profit is not necessary to succeed. And I really want to drive that home. I've got gyms right now in which their tax strategy is to generate as little profit as possible, which allows them to pay as little tax as possible. You guys ever seen those articles on Jeff Bezos and all these giant companies that do similar plays? It's not cheating. You're just, using the IRS tax code to your advantage based on your situation and what you want to accomplish. I tell most people that profit is probably only necessary, meaning that money could be going elsewhere to you or to your staff or to somewhere else in the company, if you plan to borrow money or you want to replicate your model. Meaning I, Stu, one day would like to open a second location. I might need to get a loan to do so. Or Stu, I would like to franchise a location or do a license model. Well, the people that are going to be signing up to run your thing, they're probably going to want to see that you made some profit. They go, oh, no, guys, there is profit, but I just took a bunch of it because you see what I'm saying? You'd want to set up your financial model for what you're planning on doing. This shit is chess, my friends, not checkers. We need to be planning 2 steps ahead. Now, the number one thing I took away from Profit First when I read that back in the day, revenue minus expenses does not equal profit. That's how traditionally the MBA style works. How much did you make? How much did it cost to make? When you subtract that, that is your profit. I agree 100,000% with the mindset of no. I need to go into a business let's see how much I make. And then whatever's left over, I'll take the scraps from whatever's left over. No, you want to open a business besides the fact that you love helping people and you have a passion for fitness, but that's not why you open the business. That's why you're going to be great at your business. You open a business to create a livelihood for yourself and hopefully for others via staff. Okay. So you need to take revenue and subtract what you need to make the associated taxes with the business, and then what your staff needs to make. And then what's left over, that, my friends, is your OpEx budget. So for the gym owners that some of us might have made poor decisions in the past, and we bought $8,000 of new Concept 2 equipment, and then at the end of the year, we're like, I lost another staff member because I just can't pay him enough. That's where we've got to, again, fully understand what we're trying to do with our business to create a financial model so we don't find ourselves in that position, because that position is revenue minus expenses equals my profit. And I guess I'll just spend it on what's in front of me at the time, versus calculating. I need to make this. My guess is my taxes, my CPA says my taxes is going to be about this. And I really like Coach Sally, and she talks about how she's got to quit if she's not able to make $38,000 a year. So I need to factor that in. Whatever's left over, that's what I can afford. So maybe don't go to Wadapalooza this Miami on a week-long bender, or do. But maybe not. Guys, hopefully that was helpful. I know I can't, when we do this stuff and I can't give everyone an exact answer on their fight, there's something it gives me such cringe. I would love to. So while I won't be able to give you an exact financial model, I'd love to help answer any kind of questions in and around that as it relates to your business as much as I can to my capacity. So if we want to crank away into Q&A.
That would be great. We got a few minutes here. I want to keep us at the top of the hour here, about 8 minutes. So while you guys are punching those questions in the Q&A or the chat, it's up to you guys. Either or, just know that this is going to be recorded. This has been recorded, excuse me. It's going to be spliced up and diced and then uploaded to this PushStart webinar, where we have all these great webinars dating back to the beginning of the year. And here's a link to this. If you have not signed up for our PushStart courses, you'll have to register first to sign up and sign in, and then you can enroll in all of these. They are free. We got ones about combating burnout. We have ones about turning leads into revenue, a nutrition program one. Stu just did one about avatars last month. So this is really great. We even have customer fireside chats that my colleague Michelle has run. And these are really cool. The last one was very well reviewed. DIY ad campaigns on for your gym. So really cool stuff coming down the pipeline. Please check those out. We also have a bunch of other things. We use this thing called the AMPed model to break down our courses and how we kind of look at business here at Push Press. So attracting, monetizing, plugging in, expanding, and delighting your clients. So please feel free to check those out. Yeah, any questions that Stu didn't touch or kind of touched on that you maybe want a little bit more detail on? I know it's hard to talk about finances in front of other people. So if you want to be anonymous, you can put it in there in the chat and just message me and Stu as the host and panelists, and we can leave your name out of it. And we also have a survey at the end here. Once we close this, you'll get a survey on if you want to call with one of our success team reps. We would be happy to kind of talk about your more current situation and then take some of the practices that Stu talked about and that are in the market of micro gyms and apply it. Baby steps, right, Stu? Baby steps to the bigger picture.
The one thing I'll just speak to, because I think this is the one that I think a lot of people realize once it happens, is the one thing that generally most people end up having to do is reallocate payroll, meaning they might have a salary they want to make full time, but they also have 7 part-time coaches. And when we realized, they were like, okay, well, we can't really increase your payroll budget any based on your situation, but you do have $6,000 a month you're spending, but you're giving $2,800 of it to Sally and $4,200 of it to everyone else. And they're all part-timers. Like, there could be a reallocation of payroll there, more money given to Sally, because I promise you, one A player, well compensated and well fulfilled, can do the work of 4 B players. And there's a lot of options there, but that's the one that I think most people, like, when they hear this, like, oh, this all sounds like a good idea. Then in practical application, that's the second call I get, like, oh crap, I realize my payroll, I've got way too many kids on payroll.
Yeah. You want to, I remember my coaches just, they pay you a monthly still for their access to the gym if they're part-timers, and you pay them for every hour. So they don't get, the trade for service. So making sure the money's coming in and out so you can track it a little bit better.
Yeah.
We got a question. Yeah. Site tangent, loved a weekly subscriptions, but the 30-day cancellation, that means 4 to 5 additional payments. Not a bad idea.
I still would. And the reason, again, it's ROR, guys, rate of replacement. If your gym has a marketing and sales arm in which I can cancel this person and replace them, done within 2 weeks, then do that. My experience, most micro gyms, small businesses, we don't have that. So yes, again, you doing the weekly billing is how you're selling that to the customer, $40 per week, right? Like that's how you're selling it to them. It's the same thing. It's just 30-day cancellation. And you can go ahead and you can cap that in your system and your SOPs as that's a 4-week transition, right? 4 weeks, they got to pay once a week, all week, boom. Or you can go ahead and say, sure, cancel. And it's a one-time blank of you're essentially 4 payments and you use the gym for the rest of the month, right? However much they paid for. And that's it. I still do recommend a 30-day cancellation notice.
Mm-hmm. Okay. New gym, with a few classes, offers punch cards instead of reoccurring subscriptions. Not many options to make up a missed class. Does that change your planning or the idea of financial planning?
Yeah. So when you're on a PIF model, there's very few, SoulCycle being the most successful, in which with the PIF model, it's hard because you have no predictability. You have historics and some customers on average buy a 10 pack of sessions every 8 days or whatever it may be. Okay. I would highly encourage you to take the data of everyone who's piffing, find their trend and their theme. Like, well, this Sally buys a 10 pack every 14 days. And you're going to send an individual email to everyone, letting them know you're transitioning over to EFT subscription. Yep. It is not increasing their price whatsoever. It's going to make it easier for them because they're never going to run out of classes now. And it's going to make it easier for you on the back end. It's going to be a win-win for everybody. And then letting them know that they can upgrade or downgrade that frequency as needed.
Yep.
You'll have you'll have 3 standard tiers, 8, 12, 16, whatever it may be, or unlimited. We'd come up with whatever that is. But it'd be that communication. It's not an if. We're not asking permission. You are letting them know everyone is transitioning over. You can stay on a punch card, and I'd probably have that price slightly higher now. But for your industry, I'd tell you, you're going to want to be on subscription, my man. It's just, who is this? Jeremy, I apologize. Jeremy, you're definitely going to want to be on subscription. It just, if you're going to promise payroll to somebody, well, what happens if the summer comes, everyone goes to vacation for the summer and you don't have that cash coming in? So even the martial arts studios I work with that are the most, the MMA, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu studios, they have the least business. I mean, like they're the newest ones to we need to improve the business quality scene. The gym owners, we've been here for a little while. They're even getting everyone on subscription. It just.
And it's not uncommon for the consumer in this modern society to have a subscription based, Netflix, everything. It's not a new idea and you're no different than these other big companies. So match the game. You got to do it. Cool. Well, that is a few questions. We are at the top of the hour. I think I'm going to leave it there, Stu. I know you got to travel to Nashville, which will be great. But thanks, everybody, for joining us. And we'll be letting you know about the next one coming up next month. We have Chris Spieler from Park City Fit doing a little bit of a presentation. So I'm really excited about that one. Thanks for showing up. And as always, please keep your eyes open and let us know in the survey if you need some help working through some of these elements in the app. Take care, everybody.
Thank you, guys.